Before we begin, I wanted to give a huge shout out to the folks at Amazon Music for partnering with us on this episode of the Inside Line F1 podcast. But more on this later. Right then, let's get right into today's episode.
This is the preview episode of the 2024 Belgian Grand Prix. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Kunal Shah and you are listening to the Inside Line Formula One podcast, India's best sports podcast as awarded by Hindustan Times. And along with me are my co-hosts.
Kunal, wait. I think it's possible that you might have inadvertently taken over the intro, so I would prefer that you switch back to Somil at your own convenience.
Okay. That means in the last 2 minutes of this episode, I'm going to give over to Somil after saying how I need to lead this episode because y'all told me to start this episode. That was well done. Over to you, Somil. I'll not be a Lando Norris today.
And I didn't push you out on the first part of the episode as well. It works out perfectly for everyone, right? It's this is the Hungarian, no, not the Hungarian. It's the aftermath of the Hungarian GP, which is the Belgian Grand Prix, the last race of the summer break. And as we head into all of this, right, I know we started off by talking about McLaren immediately, but I have a question for you, Sundaram. What happens if you walk into the den of a lion when he's hungry and irritated? What do you think?
I have no clue.
You become lunch, don't you? You become their next meal, right? Of course you do. And that's what we're doing this weekend, right? Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris could literally become lunch. Because look at the numbers, look at the stats. Last 3 Belgian Grand Prix won by Max Verstappen. The only 3 drivers in history to win 3 times at the Belgian Grand Prix. Ayrton Senna, Lewis Hamilton, Ayrton Senna, Michael Schumacher, and Max Verstappen. And guess what? Last couple of years, he's won even though he took an engine penalty in both of the years. In fact, in 2022, he won from 14th on the grid with an 18-second penalty, with 18 seconds of a margin. In 23, he won by 23 seconds, even though he started 6th. This is home turf if there ever was any, Sundaram.
Let me narrate the 2023 race once again.
Go for it.
He started from P6. By lap 13, he was in the lead. Charles Leclerc was on pole. He started on pole. So Max Verstappen did 2 pit stops. He finished the race 22 seconds ahead of his teammate and 32 seconds ahead of the pole sitter, Charles Leclerc, who was in P3. This year, it's pretty much not going to be the same way because the last 5 races that we've had, all of them have had a margin of less than 4 seconds. And that's the first time we've seen that in nearly 2 decades. So that's been a very, very long time that we've seen such a close bunch, such closely fought races. So I'm very, very excited for the upcoming Belgian Grand Prix.
And the last 5 races, we've not seen the pole sitter convert to a race win, which is, of course, not happened in a decade or whatever you call it. But since you mentioned 3 Max Verstappen wins, you guys have conveniently not mentioned the 2021 Belgian Grand Prix win, the farce that the FIA threw at us. The race that was run behind the safety car for 2 laps, and then 100% of the points were awarded to Max. Didn't George Russell also be on the podium?
He was second.
Yeah, he was second. I mean, whoever started wherever finished wherever. And
wait, but isn't that a Grand Slam technically? Led every lap, set fastest lap, and also had pole position. Technically,
No. The fastest lap was set by Nikita Mazepin, but it was eventually not counted officially. It wasn't made official. It was invalid. He had the fastest lap, indeed, Nikita Mazepin.
So you're saying you can
no Grand Slam.
actually score a lap, a timed lap, which is the fastest lap, under safety car.
You can.
Wow.
Because everyone is not following the same pace. Someone is a kilometer per hour quicker or slower. So,
wow.
I mean, it gives at least one opportunity for Mazepin to be fastest somewhere, and the FIA took it away.
Kunal is stunned. Kunal is
Yeah,
stunned.
I'm stunned because what it took Nikita Mazepin to get a fastest lap was a safety car. So safety car slowed it down to F2 or F3 pace, and then that's when he's like, I can get a fastest lap now. I'm actually wondering
Even-
how many fastest laps did he have? I don't know, checking. I have to check.
I think he hasn't. I'm pretty sure
he's
he
got
doesn't have
one
any other.
fastest lap, but that Asian Le Mans,
Official.
whatever. Actually, Formula One World Championship career doesn't say he's got the fastest
No.
lap.
It was invalidated.
Oh.
But he did set the fastest lap.
Invalidated
Yes,
because
that's what I said. It was
okay,
invalidated.
because it was nobody
No
got the
racing
point.
under green flag conditions.
Finally.
Yeah,
You know, he
nobody got the
If I
technically
did
did
one
have
thing-
one fast lap.
Yeah, okay.
No, he did have one fastest lap. 2022 Bahrain GP.
He didn't do
A
22.
lap that lasted only 2 corners.
Eh,
Oh, 2021. Yeah, two corners. Right? That's a fast lap. 11 seconds ended out of the race. That's a quick way to end it. That is good. But you know what? Let's get the discussion back to Max Verstappen now,
Yeah.
because the numbers are stunning. To win from P14 after taking a grid penalty, and then to win from P6, and then win by 22 seconds when Leclerc was the pole sitter and he could only manage P3. And the reports are that this time out, Verstappen is so confident, or rather Red Bull are so confident in this being their best track, that they're also willing to take an engine penalty here as well, because if not here, where else? And that is literally like saying, McLaren, walk into my territory now. You are in my house. Try and beat me if you can now.
And it is a home race for Max Verstappen, much as it is a home race for Lando Norris. So the two title protagonists, Max is Dutch Belgian and Lando Norris is British Belgian. So it's a home race for the two of them. I know Stoffel Van Dorn is also a Belgian driver who's going to test drive the Aston Martin in the Pirelli test. So we have at least 3 Belgian roots drivers this weekend. Unless Sundaram throws a boomerang, and there we go. There we go. Number 4.
I know who you're talking about. I
There
know
is-
who you're
there
bringing
is-
up.
Wait. So, Samuel, you got to go first.
Oh,
I
yes.
have no clue.
Samuel
No,
knows
I
it.
know the answer. I know the answer. You need to take a guess.
My goodness. Oh,
Yes.
Okay, it's someone who hasn't
it's a
been
very-
on the Inside Line F1 podcast.
it's a small list.
And he's a very popular driver for all the wrong reasons.
Logan Sargent? No.
No.
No?
For all the...
Try again.
Okay.
Someone
Try.
who's beaten his teammate for the last 3 races, and I'm not very happy with that.
Oh, that's a good hint.
Lance
That's a good hint.
Stroll.
Wow.
Lance Stroll
Lance Stroll is
So Lance
Canadian,
Stroll
Belgian, and Russian.
is... Yes, he's Lance Strollovich, so that's where he gets his Russian roots from his dad's side, but from his mom's side, he gets his Belgian roots. So yes, this is also his semi-home race, in a way you could say that.
Wait a minute.
I'm very surprised you forgot Lance Stroll. I'm very surprised you forgot Lance
Actually, I'm glad you reminded me of Lance Stroll. 2019 Belgian Grand Prix, I was sitting in his written media session and my jaws dropped, my eyes popped out when Lance Stroll actually said, and I know it went viral, he said, I do not like the Spa-Francorchamps. He actually said that, okay? And I can.
Why would you say that?
Yeah. He actually said that. He said he doesn't like the Spa-Francorchamps. And I was like, really? Which driver? And I can actually quote, Spa has never been my absolute favorite circuit, which is quite unusual because I know most drivers love racing there. Those were the words he said. I wrote down the quote to use every Belgian Grand Prix weekend. In fact, his teammate, who he has beaten in the last 3 races or whatever and outqualified 5 times out of 13 this year, Fernando Alonso also said something to the tune of, it has never been my favorite track. It's an incredible circuit, but I'd rather prefer Suzuka or even Silverstone. Okay, so he said that. I don't know if that was just so that he sort of toes the line of the Strolls. Okay, but Fernando Alonso also said something very strange. He said, I have never been flat out through Eau Rouge. So I don't know if Alonso was just bored.
Rubbish.
Exactly.
Of course he has been. I mean, the modern day Formula One cars are so quick. In fact, Even Sunny Hayes has gone flat out at Eau Rouge nowadays. We've seen those clips as well.
You don't want to make any more Apex references to Fernando Alonso. He was livid after some confusion last time out after qualifying. They apparently mistook him for one of the Apex cars or Apex F1 movie cars. So he was not happy in Hungary after
Who mistook
qualifying.
him?
I don't know
The
if you could.
FIA. Was it the real FIA or the fake FIA who was acting in the movie? I don't know.
The real FIA, the real FIA. So he reeled into the fake Park Ferme area. He literally got out of his car. Then his mechanics came in and said, "No, you have to take the car back to the garage. This is not the actual."
He was
Park Ferme
strapping
area."
him
So
back
he
in.
tried.
Right, I remember seeing that clip on Twitter.
But yes, Kunal said this is a track that he does not like, and I mean, of all the tracks that he's raced around, this is one of his bogey tracks. He's raced here 18 times.
Wow.
He scored just 81 points, no wins in his career, and he's led only 7 laps around this track. So I can understand why we might not necessarily see an Alonso masterclass this weekend. And I think, if I remember correctly, he crashed out of qualifying or practice. I think it was FP3 the last time.
Basically, if I ever have to challenge Fernando Alonso to a race, I have to take him to the Spa-Francorchamps. Period.
But you always want to bring in your birthday with a bang, a good bang, and it's a day before his birthday, so he might as well celebrate it with a podium, hopefully.
I thought he would turn around and say he might as well celebrate it with me because he and I share the same birthday. But okay, why not?
Yes, that
Hey.
too.
Good point. Hey, birthday with a bang. I'm pretty sure he can't do that at the Olympics now. I know I've brought it up the second time, but do you guys know about the anti-cardio bets? I just have to bring it in. Wait, here's a nugget
Yes.
that very conveniently leads us on to the intro, because that's how you do it. Extremely sharp, leaving you with a piece of information that you don't want to know about, but you still do want to know about. But I'll tell you what you do want to know about. This is the Inside Line F1 podcast. And as Kunal mentioned, we are India's best sports podcast. And apart from that as well, one of the top 1.5% of all podcasts across the world, not just on Spotify, but across all platforms. My name is Somal Arora. I am the voice of the MotoGP Indian Grand Prix and also the Indian Racing League, the Indian Supercross Championship, and many other series as well. Joined, of course, by Kunal Shah, the man who started this podcast and the man who appears on screen for the Viaplay network in Norway and is also a consultant for them. And Viaplay are the same people who broadcast Formula One in Scandinavia and across multiple countries in Europe. If you're there, you might just see him in a couple of races time here and
No,
there.
this
Are you
weekend.
appearing?
Yeah, this weekend.
You are appearing this weekend.
Saturday
Hey,
and Sunday.
Amazing. So there's your opportunity. And F1 Stats Guru, of course, is the most followed stats facts page on the internet for Formula One content. And his stats have been read out by so many people. Crofty, Laura Winter this weekend on the F1 TV broadcast as well. And that stat was about the youngest front row lockout by a single team in Formula One history, which McLaren had, and they converted that into a 1-2. But that very conveniently leads us on to the whole discussion. Wait, you were saying, Sundaram?
No. That very conveniently leads us to McLaren getting overexcited about the win, because firstly on Twitter, I think they posted this is the third ever 1-2 that we've had in F1 history. Something of that sort.
Is it?
And they deleted that shortly. Yeah, they put up a wrong stat and they deleted it. Today they put up a stat saying Norris and Piastri. Piastri and Norris finishing 1-2. I got it wrong. I only watched the race until lap 68. Sorry. But Piastri and Norris were the youngest 1-2 in F1 history, and everyone went on to correct them because it wasn't. The youngest 1-2 in history is Leclerc and Verstappen in Austria 2019. And the youngest 1-2 by a team is Ricciardo and Verstappen in Malaysia 2016. So quite clearly, I think they need a statistician. So I have my CV ready, and I'm just going to shoot it out to them after this episode is recorded. Yes, now it conveniently leads up to, you were saying,
McLaren, which we should talk about, which is interesting, right? As I mentioned early on, the numbers are stacked up against Max Verstappen. The odds coming into this race are, the past 3 races aren't, because we have gone 3 races without Verstappen winning a race for the first time since how long?
21.
2021.
21. That's a bit of a bummer, and Verstappen's also going to take an engine penalty. So if McLaren nail qualifying, which they normally have been doing these days, it is going to be a big chance for them to eat into Red Bull Racing's lead. And it brings me on to Oscar Piastri, guys, because I am actually backing him to beat Lando Norris once again this weekend on merit, not just after a slightly messed up start.
Yeah, I'll go for that. Last year, in his rookie year in Formula One, outqualified Lando Norris here at Spa by 3 tenths in Q3. In fact, wait a second. Before we get into the teams, ladies and gentlemen, guys and girls, we are actually going to the Spa Francorchamps. I think we need to spend a few minutes talking about this legendary circuit and why all the drivers, barring Lance Stroll and Fernando Alonso, absolutely love racing at this circuit. What's your favorite corner, Sommel? There are 19 of them, as you know.
Without a doubt, Pujon, 300 kilometers per hour on the entry. 300! How many people ever get to 300 kilometers per hour in their life, let alone approach a corner with 300 kph? It's madness.
Okay, we have yours. Oh, Sundaram, what about you?
Nothing beats Pujon. Even when you play the game on the F1 game, if you nail that corner, it's the most satisfying thing. Probably even more than nailing Eau Rouge Radion. That corner, like Sommel mentioned, that is ultimate satisfaction if you can actually nail it.
Now clearly, if I just say Pujon, which actually is the right answer, maybe I would say Pujon or even Blanchimont. But if I say Pujon, our listeners will be, you know what? These guys don't know the other parts of the circuit. So one guy said Pujon, and everyone else has just said Pujon. But I'll tell you what I love about Spa Francorchamps is the elevation changes. I think from turn 7 Malmedy, when you come down to turn 15, it's about 100 meters that you lose in
102.
102.2, if I remember correctly. Yeah. And
yes, and that's bigger. That's bigger than the what do you call it? The Big Ben Tower in London.
Yeah.
Wow.
There you go. So I just love Spa for that, and I've luckily been there more than a few times, and it's that one circuit when you just go to, and I feel like I'm in a shrine. I touch the tarmac, and I'm like, this is that place, and like Oscar Piastri said, like just driving up Eau Rouge doesn't matter what car you're in; it's just very, very special, right? I know it's flat, and everybody says it's no longer a corner, it's no longer a challenge, but to just see those cars go up, turn left, turn right, turn left again, and then go on to the Camel Straight. I think that's just so beautiful. I think from the exit of La Source all the way to the breaking of Camel Straits, it's till Lacombe, the right-hander that comes there. It's almost 20 plus seconds of full speed throttle. I'm going to enjoy it thoroughly this weekend. I'm so glad I'm in the studio both the days and I get to see single lap pace and race pace then.
But genuinely, do you get to watch a lot in the studio? Because there's lots of work that you've got to do, right?
No, but luckily, I'm the TV expert. So for me, I have to watch everything and then be able to decode it pretty much in real time as it happens. So to me, it's one of the biggest challenges that I have faced in Formula One and doing it live television, especially in Norwegian, where, the show is in Norwegian and I speak in English. So to understand what the others are saying in Norsk and then still hold my thoughts and sort of, connect it to what everyone else is saying and then present it live broadcast. It's a big high. But my adrenaline drops not on the Monday after the race, but the Tuesday after the race. But anyway, it's not about me. It's about the Spa Francorchamps.
No, it's interesting you mentioned, and I want to spend a second on that.
Sure.
Because when I was working on the Euros for the Sony Sports Network in India, all the experts and all the producers barely had any time because it's also concentrated, right? There's so much action within 90 minutes and there's a show to make immediately before and afterwards. So many things that you want to prepare, so many notes that you've got to make so that you barely ever get the chance to properly watch the game in proper fashion where you can dissect what's going on. And with a race like Spa that's so difficult in terms of strategy, where you've normally got a two stop. So there's so many variables at every single moment of the race. I can imagine it being such a challenge to work on in the studio itself, where you're concentrating on a million different things on what's happening in the race and what to talk about after the race as well.
Oh yeah, and I think strategy is one of my strengths, to be able to decode it real time. It's like a game of high speed chess. I'm really bad at slow speed chess, so the real game of chess. But if you put me on doing strategy, especially explaining it in broadcast, why, who did what, when, why, at least I believe it. I'm comfortable doing it, so I believe I'm pretty good at it. I've nailed it a few times to explain what's what, what's not. And when I watch the race, I'm just constantly making notes about which lap, what happened, how many seconds gap, etc. You know, the usual things which you'd need to do. So when you're in the studio and you're sort of questioned or challenged about certain situations, which pretty much nowadays happens all the time, did happen so much so last year and the year before that. So I love doing that, and to do that for Spa is one of those dreams, I would say. But this is weird, right? Spa happening before the summer break, because for all along, Spa was the race after the summer break. And it was actually one of the races that Mithila and I used to prioritize traveling to, because you would almost always have some driver market news. Then I remember Ricciardo leaving Red Bull, going to Renault happened just leading onto Spa. Pierre Gasly being asked to leave Red Bull and go back to Toro Rosso happened. Then Nico Hülkenberg happened, Esteban Ocon. Lots of driver discussions have happened. And I think this weekend we'll probably hear one or two, at least one. I think Ocon, they're just figuring when to announce it, from what I understand. But Ocon to Haas has pretty much happened. And but yeah, onto Spa. Anything that you guys feel is special about Spa, particularly as a circuit?
I think there are a couple of interesting bits, at least in terms of tires, because this is the longest circuit on the F1 calendar, and literally it needs an exception from the FIA, because no circuit is supposed to be over 7 kilometers. This is 7.004 kilometers. So it does require an exception, just like Monaco, to be on the calendar. But the interesting bit is that it is so high and on tire stress and tire abrasion, so demanding on the tires, that usually in qualifying, you'll see cars going out extremely slowly through the lap, through the out lap, because they don't want to cook their tires by the time they reach the third sector. It's also very much possible that by the time they on their push lap, the second sector is so technical and so high speed that by the time they make it to the bus stop chicane, it's very much possible that the tires are over. So that's going to be a very interesting thing to keep an eye on during qualifying. The other thing is that teams will be doing fewer laps throughout the whole race weekend, because it's such a long lap. So at any point in time, if you have a little bit of damage, it's going to be an ultra long lap all the way back to the pits for you. So if you crash and you need new parts, your race is all but over. But
go on.
You had something to say,
after
Kunal?
you.
Yeah.
Go on.
No, there's one other thing that I want all of you listeners to keep an eye on after the Belgian Grand Prix, right after the checkered flag comes down, because you're going to see the driver the winner entering the pit lane very, very soon after the checkered flag falls, because something very different happens at Spa. They don't do a cool down lap. They don't do a victory lap around Spa-Francorchamps. You will see the winner crossing the finish line, taking a U-turn at La Source, and then entering the pit lane from the pit exit and going in the wrong direction. So teams are informed well in advance that, the top 3 drivers are going to be coming in the opposite direction. So you need to keep all your mechanics and all your other parts well away from them. And that's because the track is just that long, and the cool down lap is going to be even longer. It could be 3.5 minutes, and that's going to create a lot of broadcast delays. And it's also one extra lap of that much fuel for 7 kilometers. So you won't see this at any other track, but a little factoid I found online. So and something to look forward to this weekend.
And I think it's a beautiful factoid, because with a 7 point whatever, firstly, thank you. I didn't know the FIA has to make an exception for Spa, because Spa has been one of the founding circuits of Formula One, one of the original 5. So I never imagined that Spa, and of course that was also the older layout, where rules were different, circuits were much longer. But I didn't know that they needed an exception to get Spa on the calendar. But interestingly, about that cool down lap, of course, the fuel penalty for carrying an extra lap's worth of fuel is higher around Spa, 7 kilometers over a lap. But also, I believe over 44 laps, the race distance is 308, which is already a bit more than the stipulated 300 kilometers. Now imagine adding one more for the cool down lap. It'll be 315 kilometers of fuel that they need to carry for. So I also believe it's down to one of those things about fuel penalty that the circuits would carry. But since we've reached here, we've literally not highlighted as much what are the key stories to look forward to apart from just Spa, because Spa is Spa. And then mixed weather expected this weekend, at least on Saturday, I believe, which means McLaren will be challenged. They may not be challenged on the circuit again. They will be challenged on the radio, definitely on the pit wall. I mean, after Hungary, I can't yet find one pundit, one journalist, one opinion leader, one speaker, one content creator on social media who has not given McLaren and Andrea Stella advice on what they should have done in Hungary.
Yeah, we have.
I still haven't. So you'll find that tomorrow.
There you go.
There we go. No, even we have. And they've got to be on the top of their game this weekend more than ever, because conditions at Spa-Francorchamps, as Kunal mentioned, are going to be mixed. Temperatures are going to be low. And that opens up a big window of opportunity for one team in particular, Mercedes. As of their new upgrade, we're not quite sure where they are extremely fast. We've not had enough of, let's say, a citrus paribus kind of race where we can level off all conditions and figure out, hey, Mercedes are better at a certain type of corner, be it high speed, medium speed, or low speed. Do they work better when there's more tire wear or not? But one thing's for sure, one correlation that they themselves has mentioned, and it has been visible in the last few races as well, is that whenever the conditions are cooler, Mercedes tend to come back into the race far more. And that is also going to happen, not just on Sunday, but also on Saturday, as rain is expected and conditions are going to be mixed. With Verstappen also taking a grid penalty, and with Sergio Perez also competing in Formula 1.5, that really opens up the door for McLaren versus Mercedes for a straight shootout until Verstappen comes back, because I'm still very confident he will. This is Spa. You cannot beat the king in his own den. You just can't do that. So even though he may be starting from P11, if not anywhere lower, it's going to be a fun fight between Mercedes and McLaren until Verstappen comes around.
I love how you've conveniently just left Ferrari out of the picture. When Ferrari actually...
They counted themselves in it as well?
Well,
that's
Ferrari started on pole in the last 2 years just because Max Verstappen, who got pole, took grid penalties for a power unit change in the last 2 years. So 2 consecutive years, or now 3 consecutive years, Max Verstappen is going to take power unit penalties. The last 2 years, Ferrari started on pole. Let's see what happens this weekend, especially in qualifying on Saturday. But which actually makes me wonder, could this also be the power unit penalty Grand Prix of the year? Because
you know what?
We saw a lot of that.
Yeah, I think was it last year or 22 when we had
2022, I suppose. Let me just look up the number.
Yeah, eight drivers. 9, okay.
9.
Okay.
9
had taken grid penalties.
Just checking.
I can't remember. Anyway.
But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 drivers. One.
Are you sure?
50%
of the...
Yeah, 9. No, it's 9.
9.
Yeah.
9.
Okay. And in fact, talking of McLaren, wasn't this the race when McLaren had 50 and 60 positions of grid penalties for all their multiple power units that they had to throw out? Because
you are right.
Imagine from there, those 60 place grid penalties that McLaren have sort of seen those kind of days, to now coming and saying, guess what? We'll be quick at all circuits, in all weather, in all temperature.
See, you don't need to do that. You don't need to do that, Kunal. You don't
Uh-huh.
have to hurt a Fernando Alonso fan by reminding him of his Alonso McLaren Honda days. You don't have to do that. Okay. But yeah, you were saying.
It's funny you mentioned that, Sundaram, because at that point, McLaren had a combined total of 3 drivers' world championships within their team. They now have a combined total of 3 F1 race wins within their team. It's funny how the experience levels has really got down, but the performance has come up for McLaren.
I like how you say 3 F1 races, not Grand Prix.
Yeah.
Not
We're
Grand
still,
Prix. Not
we're
Grand
still,
Prix,
we're
no.
still carrying that start ahead, no? But that's a very interesting
We are.
point. If you consider McLaren doing well in qualifying, if they get a 1-2 once again, that means the highest that Verstappen could start is P3. And if you take a grid penalty, that probably pushes him down to P13. So unless, like you said, unless he puts his car on pole, the highest he's going to start is P11. So it's going to be a very difficult ordeal for him to climb up and finish on the podium, especially I would say if not win, because we saw that in Hungary as well. They just won't have the pace as a Mercedes, definitely not the
Yeah.
McLarens, and that straight line speed is not there. And you can overtake on this track, especially on the Kemmel Straight. But how high up he finishes in the race is going to be very, very crucial. Because in the last race, McLaren literally wiped away close to 30 points of the margin that they have with Red Bull. They're currently on a 51 points gap, and they would love to bring that even further down. So it's very much possible that it might come to maybe a 25 or a 30 points difference this weekend.
I think Spa will reveal a lot because it's got everything, hasn't it? The slower speed corners where McLaren didn't find themselves to be very comfortable last year, like the bus stop chicane and La Source. It's got lots of medium to high speed corners, which McLaren should find favorable, like Pouhon, like Eau Rouge d'Ardion, like Pif Paf, like Blanchiment. It's got a perfect mix of everything, and Red Bull have been bulletproof here. If you can beat them here, you can meet them anywhere. This is the textbook Red Bull racing circuit. So that's where I think all of the eyesight should be for this weekend. Can McLaren really do that? Can they challenge them fair and square in qualifying? Because in the race, obviously, it will be
And
somewhat skewed.
McLaren.
And
Sorry.
and what you always want and what you always want to do is have that momentum going into the summer break. You
summer
don't want to
break,
go
yeah.
you don't want to go into the summer break off a couple of bad races, and then you have a lot to work on and even think on mentally. And maybe that's the next topic of discussion. One person who really needs to have a good race is Sergio Perez. I actually wanted to put this point out in the last race, that Sergio Perez has to have a couple of good races so that he has a less stressful summer break. But this, I think we are at that stage where it's do or die for him. But I think Kunal,
You know,
you
Yeah,
were about to
even
say
if
something. Yeah.
just
Yeah.
moving on to Perez, actually, even if actually, yeah, okay, now I remember. Since Sommel mentioned qualifying, McLaren is the only team with both drivers in Q3, and the only other driver to actually be in Q3 is Max Verstappen. So the 3 people who we really want to fight in qualifying
Yeah.
have had a 100% Q3 record. But the one driver who has not had a great record in Q3 is Checo Perez, of course. We probably have moved on from... He's at 4 Q1 exits in the last 6 Grand Prix. And
Yep.
the Saturday, which could be mixed weather conditions, the last 2 times it was wettish, dampish, mixed weather, was Silverstone and Hungaroring, and he crashed both the times as well. And for Perez, the pressure is, of course, on 2 counts. First count is the internal whole thing. The second is there are 8 drivers in cars who can win a race. He's the 8th driver who hasn't won a race. So there is also the whole statistical pressure. Not that he's going to, use the statistic to drive him any further, but he knows that, oh my God, we never thought Lewis would win this year and he's won. We never thought Oscar would win this year and he's won. Okay, maybe Russell and Norris could have won. Of course they won. But hey, guess what? Both Ferrari drivers could have won and they couldn't have won and they won. So suddenly it's like, what? I need to win. I have to win. And can he get a good weekend out of the bag? Because it's increasingly looking like Red Bull will need to have a plan B for Checo Perez. And I think maybe also a plan B, just in case they get beaten at Spa. Mercedes seem a little quick enough. And then Max will be like, you know what? I'm anyway getting beaten. The upgrade in Imola didn't work. The upgrade in Hungary didn't really work, which means maybe Red Bull has hit the peak. Is it time for me to jump ship? Mercedes and Toto Wolff will embrace him with both, with open arms and whatever. And could he? Yeah, Max
You're talking about
Verstappen,
Max, right?
2025 in Mercedes. If Red Bull's down trajectory or whatever thing continues, you never know if he says, you know what, forget Carlos Sainz, you need to sign me up.
Yeah. My whole question for this weekend, in fact, the one thing I'm very curious to know is, are we at the point of no return for Sergio Perez? Helmut Marko has said that Red Bull Racing will have a meeting about him at the end of the Belgian Grand Prix. And at this stage, where he's been knocked out of Q1 in the last 4 races, 4 out of 6 actually, where does he go from here? Is there anything he can do this weekend to save his seat? Is there anything that Red Bull can do with their car to make sure that they can become more competitive than McLaren? Because it seems like they're fighting a losing race on both fronts, not just the car, but also their second driver, to the point that their lead driver, the king, the lion who we all tend to refer to as Max Verstappen, is annoyed with them on all counts. And the only thing that he said after the Hungarian GP was, we need to do better in every single aspect as a team. It's unraveling. It is unraveling.
If you guys remember 2011 preseason, Robert Kubica had a crash, injured his arm, and then every team was so careful about where they allowed their drivers to race outside of Formula One. Okay, physical racing. He was rallying Robert Kubica. 2024 Hungarian Grand Prix. Helmut Marko and Red Bull have turned around and said, maybe he's not going to do sim racing on a racing weekend. So not only is physical racing not permitted, but even sim racing is suddenly joined the list of things the driver cannot do, especially on a Grand Prix weekend. And I mean, I sort of understand if it's down to, relaxing, getting the right kind of sleep. Maybe he could do it last year because he was not so challenged. He had a really competitive car. Now he is being challenged. Will that extra bit of focus and sleep and whatever help? Maybe all of that together, I guess.
But I really want to bring up a few stories of Max Verstappen and how good he is around this particular circuit by using some of his sim racing stories. Now, for all of you who don't know, I used to commentate on a lot of iRacing special events. I've done, I think, the Daytona 24 Hours, Spa 24 as well, the iRacing Porsche Sport Super Cup as well, among many other things. And I've seen Verstappen race very closely on the simulator in a few races, and I've called him on that as well. And I've had the honor of being able to commentate on him doing his great things while on a sim rig. And one interesting story, Spa 24 Hours a few years ago, Verstappen won the race while his brake pedal failed. Spa 24, literally in the middle of a stint, his brake pedal failed. But he had accumulated such a big lead with his teammates that he ended up winning, and Lando Norris got that car home eventually for Team Redline. And yes, they are both incredible Formula One drivers, but it takes a lot more than that to be good on the sim. In fact, at the Hungarian GP weekend, they just won the Spa 24 Hours, which is one of the hardest sim racing races to win anywhere. And the Imola race, where Verstappen won from Lando Norris only by a second or two thereabouts, he won the 24 Hours of Nürburgring, which on the simulator is just as daunting as you can imagine it to be. That level of concentration, that level of focus, that hunger, and to be able to replicate that across a long stint is something that really works out at a circuit like Spa, where this weekend we are back. So, if anything, I think the sim racing makes Verstappen a better driver. And we are just all here to witness the results of that this weekend.
Yes, I mean, I know you've loved sim racing, and it's something I would have, loved to do as well if I had more time. But at the end of the day, if it's taking him away from being relaxed and sleeping less and so on, it's only fair. I mean, much like drivers would be told, do not party on a Saturday night. You need to sleep and rest. Even if you're going to a pub but not having a drink, go in and rest. Maybe. But anyway, who am I to say? I'm not a 3 times world champion waiting to get my 4th. But having said that, and since we've already spoken Checo Perez as well, maybe we should get some predictions going. And I've noticed that I usually end up asking Somil the first question. Okay, this time it's for you, Sundaram. Who do you think is taking pole this race weekend?
Oh, no.
I'm going Piastri.
Hmm.
I'm going with the person who's on a high and who's having. I think he's going to come to Belgium with a lot of confidence. So I'm going
Somewhere
Piastri.
Again, that's
Carlos
where the
Sainz,
heart is,
it?
but you can't you can't go beyond Max. Max at Spa is a combination that's far, far too good. He might not win the race because that Red Bull is no longer what it was a couple of years ago, and he will reportedly be starting from a slightly lower position than where he qualifies, but nonetheless, Verstappen at Spa for pole, it's got to be him. It has got to be him.
Verstappen's taken only one pole in Belgium, and that was in
He's only
2021.
started
the
on
infamous
pole over there.
2021 Belgian Grand Prix. That's the only time he's taken pole, but yes, he's won the last.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a difference
Yes,
in
yes.
that stat. But I think I'm going to go with
Huh.
Norris. Okay, purely because I want Norris to start on pole to get a race start right for once. Somil has this long list of races
Huge.
that he's maintained of Norris starting on pole but messing up the start. And I think Norris has, so basically by your math, it's been 5 races, 3 Grand Prix, 2 sprints, whatever you call it, where Lando Norris on the opening lap itself has
In the
lost
very
the lead
recent
of the
past,
race.
that is. I'm not
If I
even
remember
looking
correctly.
beyond 23. Or rather halfway
Yeah.
through the 2023
okay,
season.
yeah.
I've not even looked at that point. I'm just starting off at Qatar 2023, and it all unravels from there.
So I would say Norris. But that said, who is your pick for the race win, Sundaram?
The pole sitter's not won in the last 5 races. Do I go by my stat or what my
Same.
instinct is telling me? I think I'm going Piastri all the way. I'm going Kunal's way. The way he went in Hungary, he was so damn sure that it's going to be Oscar Piastri in Hungary. So I'm going that route. I'm going Oscar Piastri. Back-to-back wins for McLaren. Yes.
Same. Ditto. I mean, if Max is getting that penalty, I back Piastri to be out qualifying Lando. And in that case, I feel he's going to be the one winning. I mean, he did it in tough conditions last year in his rookie season. He's now won a race. And you see how drivers change after winning their first race. You can see it with Lando Norris since he's won after Miami. He's become more decisive, more hungry, more direct, more sharp. You've seen this with Max Verstappen after he won his first race. You've seen this with Lewis Hamilton after he won his first race. And also Fernando Alonso became a totally different beast after Hungary 2003. Piastri is a driver that belongs in that same list. I think he's going to be even better now.
That's it. You know, the reason why I have chosen Norris, apart from that silly stat of his starts getting right, is also that he will now want to come out and prove why he is that number one driver. Because McLaren has said we don't really need to choose a number one driver. He's going to say, you know what? Even if you don't choose me, I'm going to force you to choose me by taking pole and whatever, right? But crucially, in fact, going back to Hungary, Lando Norris was on pole because of a toe that he got from Max Verstappen on his fast lap, right? So having said that, of course, the toe will be very crucial even at the Spa-Francorchamps. I'd love to see if Red Bull are on the back foot. Will they tell Checo Perez, give Max a toe? And then that's all he is supposed to do, which is give Max a toe. But I get a feeling it's going to be a McLaren win. And I get a feeling it's going to be Piastri winning again. So Norris on pole is what I'd go for. And then Piastri winning the race is, I think.
It's a clean sweep, huh? We're not jinxing him now, are we?
We're not jinxing him. And can you imagine? We are all, I mean, you picked Red Bull Racing for the win, which I get a feeling it could be one of their strengths.
Red Bull for the pole.
Yeah, you said pole. Yeah.
No, it's not pole anymore. Technically, see, if he gets a grid penalty, it's not pole anymore. So that's not a
For
valid.
first in qualifying. Let's put it that way now.
But what else do we have for the preview?
What we do have for the preview is a preview of what you can get if you are coming to our Inside Line F1 pit stop at Malad Social this Sunday. We are back, folks. We had over 70 people turn up for the Hungarian Grand Prix at Malad, and each and every one of you who made it such a special event. We had such a lengthy post-race interaction with so many people sharing their opinions, having tons and tons of banter, and even Abhishek Takle, veteran F1 journalist, was also able to join in on the fun. Well, what I can tell you for sure is that the action and the fun is only going to get even better this weekend. So, to get yourself a ticket, to make yourself a part of that event, all you've got to do is check out the description of all of our social media pages or even of that of this episode so that you can join in, register, and be a part of the F1 pit stop where F1 Stats Guru Sundaram and myself will be hosting. There will be a fun quiz that Sundaram will organize. And as always, we will have a really fun discussion before and after the race, analyzing everything that has just gone down. And being Belgium, being all that we've discussed over the course of this episode, there will be some madness.
There will, and there's a factoid which I'm going to share, which the Spa-Francorchamps has been around since the 1920s. And if I remember correctly, the circuit first opened for motorcyclists before they actually opened for motorcycles. I'm probably going to have to double check that fact.
What do you mean by that? Motorcyclists before motorcycles?
No, before cars. Sorry, no, motorcycles before cars. My goodness. That's what happens 56 minutes.
Two wheels are better than four anyway.
Nah, I don't think so.
Spa on two wheels would be fun. Spa on two would be fun. I mean, it's a death trap, but I'd love to do it.
I'll always choose 4 over 2, but either way.
But yes, all of this and more is going to be a part of this weekend. And folks, all you've got to do is listen to our post-race review on Monday to catch up with all the action. And if you are in Mumbai, join us in Malad for the race as well. Thank you for listening, folks. We will be back shortly. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Inside Line F1 podcast. Before we ended, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to Amazon Music once again for partnering with us on this episode of the podcast.